In this set of video notes, we're going to finish up 5.4 completing the square by completing the square in an equation so that we can solve. Using what we did, where we took half of the middle term and squared it at the end to make a complete square. So let's look at step 1. We need to collect the variables on one side of the equation and leave the 20 on the other side. So we have minus 12x minus 12x, and that becomes x squared minus 12x. We're going to leave a space here, equals, and the negative 20 stays on the other side, and then we're going to leave a space. What we're going to do is complete the square on the left, and whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we're going to add a number that makes a perfect square. In our last set of video notes, we said if we divide the middle term, the b term, by 2, then we know what our c term should be. So negative 12 divided by 2 squared, and then whatever we did to this side, which was add, now we're going to also add negative 12 over 2 squared to the other side. And when I simplify that, I have x squared minus 12x, and we are just dividing by 2 just to get the c term, so we don't really actually divide by 2, plus negative 12 over 2 is really negative 6 squared equals negative 20 plus negative 6 squared. On the left-hand side, we have x minus 6 because we made a square. On the right-hand side, we have negative 20 plus negative 6 squared is 36. So 36 minus 20 is 16. This is where we completed the square, and now we're going to solve it. So we take x minus 6 squared equals 16, square root plus minus. X minus 6 equals plus and minus, and the square root of 16 is 4. So we have x, we're going to add 6 to both sides. So we have x equals positive 4 plus 6, and x equals negative 4 plus 6. So my answers are 4 and 6 is 10, and negative 4 and 6 is 2. So those are my solutions in part. In example B, we need to write it in standard form. So we have 3x squared plus 18x equals 45. We want the letters on one side and the numbers on the other. And when we complete the square, we want the x squared to have a 1 in front. So we're going to divide by 3 everything. So we end up with x squared plus 18 divided by 3 is 6x equals 45 divided by 3 is 15. Then we're going to make room for the square component. So we have x squared plus 6x plus something equals 15 plus something. And we're going to fill in the middle term. We're going to take half of that, so 6 over 2, and square it. And then we add that to the other side as well. And then 6 over 2 is really 3, so we have x squared plus 6x plus 3 squared equals 15 plus 3 squared. And then this is now a perfect square on the left, so we have x plus 3 squared equals 15 plus 3 squared is 9, so 15 plus 9 is 24. That is completing the square. And now we can solve. We have x plus 3, quantity squared equals 24, square root both sides. Then we have x plus 3 equals plus minus root 24. And we know that 24 is 4 times 6. So x plus 3 equals square root of 4 is 2, so plus minus 2 root, what's left? 6. And then subtract 3. And x equals negative 3 plus or minus root 6. And those are our solutions. In examples C and D, we need to follow the same process. So we need to get the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. So subtract 9x from this side. We have x squared minus 9x minus 2 equals 0. And then I need to move the number because it doesn't have an x to the other side. And I have x squared minus 9x equals 2. And I'm going to leave a space because I know I have to complete the square. So in this case, I'm going to add something to this side and something to this side. In this case, I'm going to take half of the middle term, which is negative 9, and divide by 2, and square it to make the square. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Then on the left-hand side, we made it a perfect square, so it's x minus 9/2 squared. So we take the x and then negative 9/2, and that becomes our square. Equals 2 plus negative 9/2 squared. So 2 plus negative 9 squared is 81. 2 squared is 4. And then I'm going to combine, so x minus 9/2 squared equals 2 is really 8 over 4. So we're going to add 81 and 8 over 4. That makes 89 over 4. That is our square. And now we're going to solve. So x minus 9/2 squared equals 89 over 4. Square root both sides, plus or minus. And we get x minus 9/2 equals positive, negative, square root of 89 I can't do anything with, but I can simplify. Square root of 4 is 2. So we have positive, negative, square root of 89 over 2. And then we're going to add 9/2 to both sides. And I get x equals 9/2 plus or minus root 89 over 2. Since they have a common denominator, I'm going to combine them. So 9 plus or minus root 89 over 2. Those are my solutions. In the next example, we already have the x squared and the x on the same side of the equal sign. So we're just going to divide by 3 because we need to have a 1 in front of the x squared. So everything gets divided by 3. So we have x squared minus 24 divided by 3 is 8x equals 27 divided by 3 is 9. We know because we're completing the square, we have something to add. And in this case, we're going to add half of negative 8. So negative 8 divided by 2 squared. And then negative 8 divided by 2 squared. Which becomes x squared minus 8x plus negative 8 over 2 is negative 4 squared. And 9 plus negative 4 squared. Then, on the left-hand side, we made this a perfect square, so we have x and negative 4, so x minus 4 squared equals 9 plus negative 4 squared, which is 16. 16 and 9 is 25, and that is completing our square. Then we can solve. So we have x minus 4 squared equals 25, square root both sides, plus minus. X minus 4 equals positive, negative, square root of 25 is 5. And then we add 4. We have x equals positive 5 plus 4, and x equals negative 5 plus 4. 5 and 4 is 9, negative 5 and 4 is negative 1. So our answers are 9 and negative 1. Those are our solutions. And that is the completion of completing the square.